welcome back to Along This Spiritual Journey. I am your host and spiritual guide, Jah. So, if you have followed me thus far, we are starting a new series called The ABCs of Spirituality, and we are now on the letter B. So, B is for belief. And what we want to go down this rabbit hole is that when I first started to encounter my spiritual practices, my spiritual gifts, the things that kind of happened once I had my awakening, we talked about awakening already. Once I started to become more aware and I started to follow the patterns and I started to see that things were happening beyond human explanation, right? Because remember, a lot of our belief systems are built on school, religion, family, things that just were given at birth, right? And eventually you get to the point where you recognize that you have a choice in what you believe. I know a lot of people don't think that way. They feel because they're this ethnicity or they're this culture or they grew up in this socioeconomic or whatever the thing might be, that that is who they are. They believe that that is their identity. And one of the biggest jokes on the world is that people feel that their identity is tied directly to others' identity. We can have subcultures of beliefs about what we feel, think, and want to be, but your identity is still your inner reality that you are now projecting onto the outside world. That's why when we have certain beliefs about things and people feel very strongly about things, they can feel that way all day. They can believe whatever they want, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. And this is why it's a double-edged sword, because belief can be used for good and it can also be used for evil. Unfortunately, like all things in this world, there is a duality. And when you start to recognize the awareness of the awakening, which is things are happening around me all the time. Some of it is in my control, most of it is out of my control. So based on this information, now I have to believe that this thing is either true or a coincidence, right? We know that the belief in oxygen, right? We know that that's something we have to believe in because we're breathing something. If we take away the names and the titles, sure, we can just call it life, the breathing thing that we use to keep us alive, right? But air is what we call it, oxygen, all these things that break it down between the exchange of carbon dioxide with the human body and argon and all these different things, all these different elements in chemistry. I'm not really into chemistry that much, so I can't really break it down to a T, but I can give you my opinion. That these things is what we have a belief in science, right? To say that here's a title, here's a title, here's a title, because remember, everything is a title. Everything is a title. So this title represents this concept, and this concept is an idea of something that we have observed and or feel could happen based on emotional observation or mental observation, which we call logic. So one of the things that I want people to remember is the journey to belief is about what story you're telling yourself. It's about how you take these stories and these thoughts and you start to manifest them into an actual experience. So when you know that your beliefs are what create your experience, it gives you so much more power back and autonomy. When I talk about autonomy and sovereignty, these are things about self-governing. You know, autonomy is about self-governing of the human self. Sovereignty is about a practice and a piece to protect your spiritual and emotional health. At least that's my interpretation. I'm sure people have their own, but for my belief system, I feel that you do have to respect the physical realm and the physical science, but you should also highly respect and regard the spiritual and emotional realms because they are what truly form our beliefs, right? Think about it when we're in school and we're hanging out with a group of kids. Based on if that group of kids says they're cool because of their shoes or they're cool because they can afford this new toy, well, now the belief system is they're cool by whatever means is saying I can be cool then if I do the same thing. So if I get these shoes or if I dress this way or talk this way, now the belief is I'll be cool. Do you see how this can start to build distorted identities throughout our whole entire timeline. Because remember, life is a timeline. Yes, we are here as individuals and a collective experiencing this earth and this world and this reality, but it's also a timeline. Some people see it as linear, I see it as cyclical. Everything to me is a cycle within a cycle within a cycle. And once you complete one cycle, you move on to the next cycle. It's just kind of how it works. And so when we start to see which cycles built which levels of our identity, is how we then start integrating our thoughts and beliefs into our daily life. So I know I just said a lot there. So we could take a moment to breathe and process what I'm saying. So when we are able to not fear what we believe, investigate what we believe, we will continue to grow in what we call the ascension process of the spiritual journey. Because I want people to remember a lot of these words and acronyms and titles, they sound fancy, but when you boil it down to the bare basic minimum, then you just got to identify what it means to you. And so that's the thing that I tell people. It's like, don't be overwhelmed by spiritual concepts. Don't be overwhelmed by scientific concepts. Remember, some random human, just like me, made up some word because they said, well, this is this word based on this thing, based on this observation. That's the word. They're just words. At the end of the day, it's all about the meaning and the belief behind the concept. And so when you understand that that's the entire world, right? Like the belief is, this is a hat. I can say it's pants. People are going to be like, that's not pants, because pants you put on your legs. And I can say, well, my belief is that a hat is pants for the head, right? Like if I convince enough people that that's true, then enough people will say that's true. And now this truth becomes a belief system. So that's why I want people to remember that you don't have to choose to believe in everyone's reality. Now, there are rules to the game that you have to participate in, right? You have to know that there's part of everyone's belief system where, let's talk about like social interactions, right? Most people believe that you should greet someone when they first walk into a room and say hello and, introduce yourself and be kind and polite, right? This is a social belief. This doesn't mean you have to do it. There's plenty of times where you can walk into a room and you don't have to speak to anyone. People, and from that, people are going to choose to believe about you whatever they want to believe. But you have to remember that belief systems are not here to deem you as less than or better than. They're here to help you navigate the world. So what I like to do is I like to take a practice and I like to go back into my reality of my inner world and just pick the most random concept, right? Like something that you don't actually even care about, but because of that, it's going to help you really pinpoint and define how you craft or how you come up with your ideas of belief. And so one thing I start with is like, I'll say, do I like cars or trucks? Right? From here, I say, well, I like cars more because, I can feel like it's more compact and blah, 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 blah. But then I can say, well, I like trucks more because I feel that trucks get better gas mileage and I can use them for hauling stuff. In this moment, these are just concepts, right, of choice. Once I make a choice about something, then I'm going to start developing beliefs around it. So once I make a choice, let's say I pick the truck. Now that I've chosen the truck, now I believe that I can go over bigger bumps and bigger humps because the truck is up higher. So therefore I should be able to navigate more what they call rigid or off-road types of terrain, right? This is a belief. Doesn't mean it's true. There's plenty of trucks that really do not do well in rough terrain, but the belief system is because it's a truck, because it comes off more heavy duty, because it looks like it's built for that, then we choose to believe that. Now, the fun part comes in to when you start applying it. This is the part where it's the scientific method, which I really enjoy, and you go out and test it. You go out into the world and you test what you believe. Can I actually go over that road with all those humps and not ruin my truck, not ruin my suspension? And you do it, and you're like, everything's still good. And you do it a couple more times, you realize, okay, my belief system now is trucks are built for off-roading. This is okay. Now, if you try that with the car, and you go out and you say, I believe the car can do this. I believe that a regular sedan can go off-road and just go through all this rough terrain and it'll be fine. Go test it. And you test it and you find out, this is probably not the best car or vehicle to use for this thing, right? And then you can take that belief and you can create what we call, again, our ideas, our ideologies around things, and that's what we call facts, okay? I know this might feel a little all over the place for some people, but I try my best to articulate my thoughts in a way that makes sense, because for me, it's all in here, and it just kind of comes out. Which is why I need notes sometimes, because I'm like, where was I? Stay on point, Ja. But anywho, the whole point of belief system is shifting beliefs so that you're able to align your soul to its truths. So there are physical truths in this world and there are spiritual truths. The spiritual truth is what I'm more focused on, which is I truly believe that each of us are incarnated. I believe that each of us did know who we were before we came to this earth, and somehow through just again the transmutation of energy, we forgot, or we didn't remember, or we were born new again, is how they like to say. And so through that process of forgetting, we have to learn how to remember. And learning how to remember is about what we believe we're worthy of, what we know that we're qualified for, right? If you go out and you go to school and you learn something and you learn this modality in and out and every bit and part of it, great. You studied, you learned it, but it's not real until you make it applicable, right? There's a lot of theory where you can say how you feel, what you think, what you believe, but until you put it into practice, that thing you believe in is still ideating somewhere in the ethers, where it's saying, well, until I get someone who's willing and ready to jump off, they say, into the deep end and just trust that what we believe is real, then I'm going to go find energy that aligns with this frequency. So I love Dr. Joe Dispenza, because he breaks this down so much better, I feel, as far as when he talks about the heart consciousness and talking about rewiring the human brain so that the spiritual brain can flow through us better, right? That's the concept that I'm picking out for that. So when we talk about belief systems, that's a very strong one, where it's like, I believe that I can change. I believe that I can become something new. I believe I can be whatever I want to be without any hesitation of someone telling me I can't, right? That begins with a knowing that you have to allow through the awakening. In the very first video I talk about A for awakening, I talk about the awareness, the pattern. When you are aware of the pattern, that's when you start saying like, aha, right? That's when people start saying, oh, I see repeating numbers, or I did this thing and I feel like it's deja vu, like it's happening to me again, right? That's the awareness of the awakening. So now you can choose to believe that what you are feeling is true. What you are feeling is correct. A lot of people are going to tell you, yeah, that's not real. That's a bunch of hoo-ha, la 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 la, scientifically, da 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 da. And I always tell people, you do realize every book was someone else's thoughts, right? Before it was in print, it was someone's thoughts. Before it was a thought, it was possibly observation. A lot of times we see things happen, we conclude to what we believe is happening, and then we make a synopsis. And from that synopsis, we can gather more information to try to make sure that we can prove our point is right. But many things that are truth have still been disproven, right? Let's play that game. People for a long time thought that, again, women and people of color, that they were subhuman, right? We don't need to say which people they are, but that was put into the history books, that was put into the medical books, that a class of people, a group of people aren't real because they don't have these attributes or follow these policies. And it's like, well, that's not truth. That's an observation. And that's also a distorted observation because now you're putting yourself on some weird pedestal that shouldn't exist. Every human, every species of animal is here on its own separate journey, but we're part of a collective conscious. And that collective conscious, again, is what we make group think. When we talk about manifesting, and I've talked about this before in many videos, but I also tapped on this in the A for Awakening. When we talk about manifesting, we're talking about energy. We're putting so much energy into something that it has to be real, right? That it has to become true. This is what the patriarch is. This is what the matriarch is. If you and a group of people believe something so much and you put it into practice, it's truth. Just like if you and a group of people believe something so much and said, this is not right, that makes it not right. That becomes the truth. That becomes a belief. So the thing that we have to learn how to do on this journey, especially as spiritualists, is learning how to stand alone. There's going to be a lot of times where people are going to come against you. I've had this happen, and they show you the videos and the pictures, and it seems like it's just for inspiration, but I have literally been one person in a group of over like 100 people in this room. Everybody was like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And I was like, that's fine. You can all believe what you choose. From my experience, this is what happened, so therefore this is correct for me. Not until the expert came along and said, actually, yes, there are variations of this truth, that this can be the truth, but there's also things, just like a video game, if you take this road or take that route, you're going to come in and encounter different terrain, you're going to come in and encounter different characters, but if the road still ends at the same space, right? If the ending point is the same, there can be 18 roads, all different experiences, but if they still all go to the same end goal, that's all truths of the same thing. Does that make sense? So I know a lot of people, they think, well, truth is only one side. Not really. We've learned that many a times through our system of how we judge people when it comes to putting them in jail and other things. Like, you say that they're guilty, and then years later you find out they were never guilty because a system of belief that was built around giving that person a chance or going and researching further into what the truth was stifled their freedom, and then they ended up in a space where, because no one believed them, the truth wasn't set free. And so when we understand that belief is about setting yourself free, it truly is. It's truly about letting go and letting God, right? Letting the will be done. Because for most of us, we feel that we can control our environment and that we can control the outcome, but we really can't. We do have say in where we direct it, right? I would say it's like running water. You can help that water turn on and off. You can direct where that water goes. But if the stream of flow is more powerful than what's controlling it from holding it back, or is more powerful than it overflows than the direction of the space you dug out for it, then it's going to go wherever it wants, right? That's why belief systems are important. But it's also good to understand that you have to have discernment and self-awareness to know what the truth is for you in that time, in that moment, in that environment. Because when you are awake or woke, because I know that got misconstrued in so many different ways, the spiritual element to wokeness is, I see what's happening, I know what's happening, but no one else cares about what's happening, right? That's wokeness, and it's essentially, I don't know how it became this whole thing about, you already know what people did. I ain't even gonna go down that road. But it's still weird that it's like the concept of being aware of the reality that we all see should trump as the truth versus the reality that we believe is happening. But again, sometimes we see things that we believe are true, and that's not what's really happening. So this is why, again, discernment is important. So one of the things that I like to do, again, like, because I love testing myself, I love going on random walks, and I call it free walking, where I just turn. I just keep walking, just keep turning, and go this way, go that route, go this way. Because I truly believe that if you do that, you would discover new things that you never knew existed were there. Or you're going to find something that's really cool and you're going to be like, wow, had I not trusted myself to take a chance and follow the unknown, I would still have this old belief system that going that way is dangerous or being in that environment is dangerous. I'm not saying go to every environment that is possibly dangerous, but I am saying sometimes you have to take the risk and go out and find out what's true or not. Because a lot of us are limiting our experience as humans because we're believing other people's narratives. I've said it before, when you get handed a script, that is somebody else's story. So either you choose to read that script over and over and over and step on stage, the stage they built with the script they handed you, and keep reliving this character that they created for you to be. In reality, you know that's not who you are. You don't want to read that script. That is not the play you want to be in. That is not even the story you want to tell. So if you are so focused on belief systems that don't belong to you, then that's what's going to happen throughout your existence, right? I got to this point in life trusting that even if it doesn't make sense to the human world now, it will make sense for my spiritual world later. And it's a very grim way of looking at things, but we all are going to pass from this earth one day. And I think that's the part of religion that it got right, which is how you emotionally live your life and how you logically choose your morals will come back to bite you in the butt later. That's just my belief. Some people say none of this matters, it's all meaningless. That's a choice. You can say that if you want to, but I tell you this much, you don't control the air you breathe. You don't control the fact that you need to sleep. Your body's going to sleep when it wants to sleep. Your body needs water. It's going to want water. You're going to get dehydrated. So there's so many elements to being human that we have no control over. So why would it not be the same in the spirit realm? So instead of saying no, 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 nay, 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 maybe we should say, okay, I don't know if this is true, but let me be open to the possibility. Let me be open to the experience of what it could possibly be, because then when we do this, this is what shifts our reality. When we talk about jumping timelines and moving into new spaces of reality, it's about the belief first. The belief is the vehicle. So how you choose to drive that vehicle is where it's going to take you. So if your belief only wants to stay local, well, you're going to drive around in local areas. If your beliefs are national and wants to see more and do more, well, you got to go out and travel. You got to go put in the work. You got to go learn other people's cultures and subcultures. And even if you agree or disagree with it, you have to learn that other people's systems of belief are theirs. I feel that respecting others' concepts are important, but acting on them is a completely different thing, right? I can understand that there's people who have hate in their heart. I don't believe in it, but I'm also not going to go try to convince them to stop being hateful. Why? That's not my energy. That's not my story. And giving away good vital energy to someone who knows that they're not ready to see the light, that they're not ready to do the work, is a waste of time for me. That's why they say you can go out and give as much as you want, but until the person is really ready to fish for themselves, right, or feed themselves, it's all going to be irrelevant. So I'm not saying that I'm not willing to help others see the reality that I see if they're wanting to be on this side of awareness and awakeness. But also I know that it's a journey that you have to complete alone. You can have people around you. I think that's the part that I also want to reiterate is when we talk about aloneness and isolation, you don't have to be completely isolated, but you do have to have alone time to work through what you're feeling, to work through what you believe is true, to work through what you know is true, right? Like there's a fact. I know that I'm tall. That's not going to change, right? Just somebody can say I'm short. That's not going to change. I'm still 6'5". That ain't going nowhere, right? Now, because I'm tall, I have a whole list of beliefs that come along with that, which I had to go out and experiment with if it's true or not. Just because I'm tall, most people think I'm dad energy, big brother energy. They want to hug and ask me to reach for things and do things for them, and that's fine. That's part of being tall. But I also remind people I like to be vulnerable too. I have the right to feel vulnerable. Just because everyone else sees me as protection energy or a bigger man, that's okay. But still be gentle with me, be kind to me. I deserve love too, right? This is how we change the system. Remember, a belief is the vehicle, the system is the highway, it's the road, it's the freeway. We have built that as humans, no one else, we have. And so when we keep going down this journey of spirituality, again, it doesn't mean you have to talk a certain way, dress a certain way. Again, I love crystals, you don't have to love crystals. I love tarot, you don't have to love tarot. The point of belief is it working for me? And if it's working for me, how do I continue to amplify what's working for me so that I'm happy at the space and journey I am in life? Does that make sense? I hope it does, because again, I be all over the place. But anywho, the takeaway for today is I want you to practice asking yourself, how can I step into my next chapter of life believing what I chose and not what someone else chose for me? That's the homework. So, I mean, feel free. Of course, you can always get down in the comments. I love seeing your stories. I love hearing other people's opinions. But I want that to be the takeaway question. If I have the choice to choose what I believe, what am I choosing to believe today that's going to help me live the better life that I want? Remember, things are going to happen that we consider bad. Bad things are inevitable, but so are good things. Good things are inevitable too. So you're allowed to believe whatever you want to believe, as long as that belief system is set up and curated by you and not by society solely, and not by your family solely or the place you grew up. Because again, there's so many people who are stuck in subcultural beliefs and they run with that until the death. And then they get to that end of their life and say, I wish I had did this. I truly wish that I had trusted myself and my own gut. Because that's what it comes back to. What do you believe is true? What do you believe you can do? And once you know that you believe in yourself and you trust yourself, then you'll be able to tell a story that's aligned with you. Okay, I think I said enough. Anywho, please feel free to follow along on all my old videos. I mean, they're all there for you to binge watch. Please do so. Also, again, this new series I'm starting, the ABCs of Spirituality, each day. I've been doing it like every other day, just because I do work full time, and then I have my business that I have other responsibilities that I have to take care of. So I try to record when I can, but right now it feels like every other day feels good. So expect the videos to come. I'm not going to say specific dates yet, but they will come, and they will be weekly, and there'll be enough here for you to follow along with me. And again, you can check out my website, epicenterU.org, where I have different books and different exercises you can do, and all these little things that are there for you. That is a world that I curated for you. So you can check out my projects, or you can go to the store. I have a EQ shop store where I do have like some PDFs and takeaways there. Of course, you know, they're for purchase, but I do have a few things where if you need more free materials, I can definitely whip some things up. Right now, it's just been for so long that I have been in the curation world, which usually means it's client based. It's not so much open to the public. So I've been trying to get better at just giving more tools and freebies to the public. So let me know if this works for you. And again, please feel free to get down in the comments, push that like button, push that follow button. And as always, love ya.